Nusakut, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jimmy Nalik, and welcome to day 3 of the Career Bootcamp 2025, where you'll unlock the secrets of building a successful career. Please note that this session will be offered in English and French simultaneously. To view the French session, please return to the Zoom lobby and join the French session. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm here on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, and who have lived in this land since time immemorial, and I encourage you all to acknowledge the land that you are on as well. You have to excuse me, I have a bit of a cough today, so please bear with me. But Career Bootcamp is the largest conference in the GC, and the only goal is to support you in your career journey. As we move through today's sessions, please share your questions by using the Q&A button in the language of your choice. You can vote for questions you like by clicking the thumbs up button. As with all FYN sessions, this session will be recorded, so you can go back and check out the recordings and insights at a later date. In addition to the recordings on our YouTube channel, we are offering another way to learn this year, a podcast series of the Career Bootcamp sessions. After the CBC, podcasts will be made available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We'd also like to note that the PowerPoint presentations for each section is included in our wiki page so that you can feel free to follow along at your own rate and improve your learning experience. Also, resources will be shared during the session as well. Will be added to our wiki page under resources. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Jimmy Onalik, and I am the president of the Canadian Northern Economic Development Agency. I'm really excited for this session today because I'm very new to the Government of Canada. I've been in the Government of Canada for approximately 14 or 15 months. I'm originally from Iqaluit Nunavut, grew up in Rankin Inlet, represent. And I'm really excited to join this team and really help to kind of grow the economy of the North. This is really exciting work that we do here at CanNor. And I'd just like to ask our panelists, Nat and Josh, to introduce themselves, please. Thank you.
So if we could move to the next slide. My name's Natalie. I started my career with the federal government at ESDC's Innovation Lab. And while at ESDC, was really fortunate to get to go work at Policy Horizons, which is a foresight lab that at the time was being managed by our ESDC ADMO from Public Affairs. And from there, came over to ISED to launch a digital innovation lab, which over the years has evolved into a design center of expertise and experimentation, where we do a lot of user research on various services that the department provides Canadian businesses. I was born and raised in Toronto, where I studied at University of Toronto, did a political science degree, and then did a master's at OCAD in Masters of Design, Strategic Foresight and Innovation, before joining the federal government. On that note, I'll pass it over to Josh.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. So I'm Joshua Frame. I'm the National Chair of the Federal Youth Network. I am based out of Ottawa, unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I've been in the National Chair role since 2016, which actually seems like I think that's more than half my career. But during that time, the FYN has really changed. So it started as a largely volunteer organization in 2016 with a minimal budget, and now we have a full-time team of 8 employees and 45 funding departments and a stable structure to deliver learning to 20,000 public servants annually. I've spent about roughly 60% of my career in the National Capital Region and about 40% in the Ontario region, kind of going between different roles, and about half my career has been spent in learning. The first half was really spent in sort of budgeting, program analysis, and different management roles at CRA, IRCC, Canada School of Public Service, and now Indigenous Services Canada. So very happy to be with you here today, and look forward to a great discussion. Okay, next slide, please.
So today we're here to talk about understanding your passion. And I want to start off by thanking the Federal Youth Network for inviting me because I am getting the opportunity to kind of express my passion in public speaking. So passion is explained as a strong feeling of enthusiasm towards a thing or an idea. It's something that helps you stay engaged at work. It reduces stress. It boosts creativity and innovation, and can potentially help you live a life of bliss if it's work that you love doing. My passion was driven by trying to make a difference through social innovation, social entrepreneurship, and being impact driven and people first. And this is sort of what defined the earliest stages of my career. It led me to pursue a master's of design and strategic foresight and innovation, which led me to my career in the public service, working at various innovation labs. And by working at innovation labs and with the public service, I've had an opportunity to be a part of social impact that's focused on collaborating with various stakeholders within the organization, but also citizens to drive service delivery transformation. So passion is something that truly makes us feel excited and feel a sense of purpose and reward. So ask yourself, what is most aligned with your vision? And think about contributing towards departmental priorities and mandates that reflect the vision and impact you'd like to have on Canadian citizens. For example, I work at ISED, which allows me to support the vision of supporting Canadian businesses, which is a mission close to my heart, having been raised by two individuals who ran small businesses while I was growing up. So why is it important for us to connect passion and career development? Well, one, it helps us define career goals. Self-reflection helps us identify what motivates us and shapes a more purposeful and satisfying career path. It improves focus and productivity because now you know what your strengths are, and enhances areas of growth that will boost your productivity and job satisfaction. It will likely reduce burnout by aligning your roles with your personal values and strengths. It'll help you navigate career transitions. You'll get to be able to start to assess where you want to change and what direction you might want to take with your career. It helps build a growth mindset through regular self-assessment and learning and adaptability, key components of career advancement. And it will ultimately ensure a rewarding career and fulfillment at the end of the day. So think to yourself, what kind of work comes naturally to you? If something is the right fit for you, it'll feel natural and comfortable for you. It'll feel like you're not acting or trying to be someone else, which can often be very draining and tiring. So what kind of work are you most driven by? It's important to think about the larger picture. For example, if you like environmental issues, maybe you should consider working for a department like Environment Canada. Or if you would like to have an impact on healthcare, joining Health Canada. Figure out what impact you want to have on the lives of Canadians and find a department driven by a similar mandate can offer a very rewarding career experience. On that note, I'll pass it on to Josh.
Excellent. So next slide, please. Excellent. So in terms of understanding your values, so as Natalie alluded to, so you want to look at, do your personal values kind of align with what you're looking for in terms of the department that you work for, or the type of role that you look at. Over time, the FYN has had some different workshops kind of looking at this. How do you kind of understand yourself in order to understand what you want to be pursuing? And we'll talk about that a little bit further in the presentation. But you want to really seek roles or in organizations that kind of reflect your values. So that may or may not be, exactly your passion at the beginning of your career. I will say, I started my first permanent role in the Canada Revenue Agency. I don't know that I was passionate about taxation, for example, but I was passionate about what taxation brought, and that we should have a fair and just system where we are all paying our fair share to make the services and infrastructure that we need in Canada happen. So I wasn't a passionate, person on taxation, but I was passionate about what it brought to Canadians. You also want to consider work-life balance, management style, and learning opportunities. And we talked a little bit about how you can kind of integrate this in terms of research that you do on a department or an agency before you apply there. Look at their public service employee survey results. Look at if they're a 100 top 100 employer for young people or a top 100 employer overall. Look at the way people talk about the department. Is it positively? Is it are folks who are working there passionate about the work that they do and really engaged, or do you see sort of negativity about sort of the work environment, the management environment, and are things going well, or are things not going as well as they could in that agency before you look at an opportunity there? Some other important considerations. So you must be able to carry your duties in a non-partisan way. So I like to say that I tell no one on LinkedIn or any social media platform who I am voting for or what party I support. And the decisions I make as a public servant should have nothing to do with my personal views about political issues or political parties I do or don't support. We have to be able to make those decisions, in a nonpartisan manner, and we serve the government of the day. That government can change. In my time, I started working under a conservative government in 2015. That changed to a liberal government, and that's been the case since 2015. But in both of those instances, I serve the government of the day in a nonpartisan manner by providing evidence-based decision-making and fearless advice and loyal implementation of the government of the day's priorities. Your personal projects and endeavors can't create a conflict of interest or an apparent or perceived conflict of interest with your job. So there are various ways that we need at various times to declare if there is a potential conflict of interest. This can be as sort of minor as I had an employee who was the sort of secretary for their kids' soccer team, managing the finances for that soccer team. But we worked in CRA in a sensitive area, and you had to declare something as sort of minor as that to make sure that that wasn't a conflict of interest. It was a nonprofit organization. Really, it was no conflict of interest of any kind. But it wasn't up to that employee to make that determination. So make sure that you're aware of those policies as well in terms of what could be perceived as a conflict. And I think at the Values and Ethics Symposium in the fall, there were some good discussions around that, around where your personal views may differ from the government's views, and how to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a problematic situation. Next slide, please. And over to you now.
So personality assessments can be a valuable tool in guiding your career in several ways. One, it creates self-awareness. So a personality assessment helps you understand your strengths, your weaknesses, your preferences, and communication style. This self-awareness can guide you toward career paths that align with your natural tendencies and talents. So for instance, if you have a strong attention to detail, you might prefer working independently. You might excel in roles such as data analysis or software development, where precision and focus are valued. Two, it helps you figure out the right career fit. By understanding your personality type, you can identify the careers that are well suited to your temperament and personality. So for example, if you're introverted and detail-oriented, you might thrive in research or an analytical role. While if you're extroverted, enjoy working with people, a career in ministerial events, public affairs, outreach and engagement, or even user research might be more fulfilling. Further, it also helps you navigate team dynamics. Personality assessments can also provide insight into how you work well with others and contribute to that team dynamic. Knowing your colleagues' personality types helps you collaborate more effectively, resolve potential conflicts, and leverage each other's strengths. For instance, if you're someone who prefers to work autonomously and make decisions independently, you might want to navigate towards opportunities that allow for a high degree of autonomy. On the other hand, if you thrive in collaborative environments and enjoy bouncing ideas off others, you might enjoy team-oriented teams like teams in design, product development, or project management. Understanding your preferred work style can help you target job opportunities that align with your strengths and preferences and increases your chances of finding a fulfilling career fit, which I can promise you exists in the government of Canada. Further, it leads to professional development. So armed with the knowledge of your personality type, you can tailor your professional development efforts to focus on areas that help you grow and succeed in your chosen career path. For example, let's say you're interested in taking on more leadership roles. Perhaps you would take some leadership training. This will prepare you once the opportunity reveals itself. And finally, it helps with career transitions. It can help you understand sort of where you might want to go next in your career and have a sense of what skills you currently have that might be transferable towards a new career path. And on that note, I'll pass it over to Josh again.
Right. All right. So how do you do that? So in terms of personality assessments, there are a whole list of tools there. We will have all of those links on our resources page. For example, a number of the folks on our team are facilitators for something called Insights Discovery. That kind of breaks down your sort of personality and approach by different, they call them color energies. And then talks about, that there's no right or wrong of this, but it's about sort of understanding and embracing each other's differences and better understanding one another. Myers-Briggs takes a similar sort of approach. So the Myers-Briggs type indicator, you may have done this before. That's where you would get sort of an indication of 4 letters, kind of breaking down who you are with those 4 letters. So I think the first time I did it, I was ENTP. So extrovert, and then I think it was intuition, thinking, and it was feel versus feel. I can't remember the last one. Anyways, so there are a whole host of these tools that are available: DISC assessment, Strengths Finder, and the overall thing I would say is that it sort of doesn't matter which of these tools that you utilize. It's kind of about the process of making some effort to do a self-assessment. What do you actually excel at? What do you actually sort of embrace? How do you want to be approached? And so, for example, we a number of years ago, there were some surveys that kind of said, surprisingly, a good percentage of public service managers are more so introverted than they are extroverted. And that's not to say that there's a particular way that somebody should be a manager or a director or a deputy minister. And realistically, this is about kind of figuring out who you are so that you can kind of apply that to your situation later on. So we talk about there are introverted and extroverted managers, but generally, good managers will want to engage with people in some way. If you want to avoid people at all costs, then going into a management or leadership position probably isn't your best bet for either career success or just general happiness. But doing some level of figuring out what is it that you are looking for, and we had a whole workshop at our in-person learning day developed by one of our very talented employees, Alexa, who looked at, how do you align some of these self-assessments and then look at a job description and say, is that a job that I would like to do? Is that a job that actually fits with my personality and where my strengths lie? And if not, maybe it's still totally fine to do that job, but knowing kind of what will be a good fit kind of before you go into it is a great plan. I figured out on a various number of occasions what was not a great fit for me. I'm very people focused, and when I had a team of 25 direct reports, I found it very difficult to give them any level of like the attention and career development advice and performance management. So I realized that a team of 25 where I couldn't deliver the same level of service to my team wasn't a fit for me. But lots of these self-reflection exercises will really help you kind of figure out what is it that you'll kind of excel at in the public service. Okay, next slide, and I'll hand it back to Nat.
So now let's dive into some career planning strategies. So number 1, know the landscape. Get on jobs.jc.ca and look at the job opportunities out there. You'll also find a lot of information on LinkedIn and Facebook groups. There's a great GC policy Facebook group that you can check out where job opportunities are constantly being posted. 2, take part in mentorship opportunities. There's various mentorship resources out there. The Federal Youth Network hosted a really amazing speed mentorship event a few weeks ago. And this is a great way to learn from your peers and those further ahead in their careers and gather some valuable insights that can further your career. 3, get involved in volunteer opportunities. Make time to explore opportunities to volunteer in your community or take on a micro mission or a secondment or an assignment in various areas across the government of Canada. These volunteer opportunities will help you build lasting relationships. And there's also various committees you can join, such as departmental YPNs, regional networks, DEI networks, GCWCC. And these opportunities will really help you kind of land your dream job. Now, for myself personally, I co-chaired Interconnects, which is a professional engaged network at ISED. And it really did open a lot of doors for me. I got to host the first virtual coffee chat with DMO during COVID. And this led to receiving a job opportunity at Parliamentary Affairs, where we worked closely in reporting to DMO. So you never know where these volunteer opportunities can take you. And finally, identify and enhance your skills. Jump on things like CSPS, the Canada School of Public Service, learn new skills, enhance relevant skills, and make sure you don't screen yourself out of new opportunities. There's a lot of skills that you have that can be transferable, and you can add them to your learning plan by also, attending free conferences and taking courses even outside of CSPS, such as on Coursera, to keep broadening your skills. And finally, network. This is something that I live by. Getting engaged in the GC community will really make a difference in your experience in the government of Canada. I just want to commend everyone that's here today. You're already doing that by being engaged with the Federal Youth Network. And this can lead to opportunities to talk to so many different types of people in the government of Canada, learn about so many amazing different opportunities that are out there, and really ensure that you have a really fulfilling career. So on that note, I'll pass it back to Josh.
Excellent. Okay, so we've listed off some resources here that that could help you. Some of these are like What Color is Your Parachute? The book Grit by Angela Duckworth is a really interesting one, kind of talking about sort of resilience. How do we build resilience for ourselves and sort of as a society? I think that is a great one, especially to look at in sort of a challenging job landscape. We are going to experience a ton of change, a ton of workloads that are reduced and budgets that are constrained over the next number of years. And grit and developing sort of that resilience is going to be key towards your career development. I talk a little bit about when I was applying to the government of Canada 15, 16 years ago. And it was a similar time of lots of hiring freezes, lots of budget reductions. And it took me 35 job postings to get into a pool that was actually staffing and get staffed to a permanent role. So that took some level of, being able to just kind of, brush things off, keep applying to jobs, keep pushing for that success on a process. But definitely grit, I would say, is a huge factor to think about. Then we have some other videos linked. TEDx videos are and TED Talks are incredible resources. 10 to 20-minute talks to look at, and lots of things to consider there. Any topic that you can think of, go to the TED website and you can find it. You can also select subtitles in the language of your choice. Next slide, please. All right, and then we host a page for all sorts of career tools on our wiki site and on our various wiki sites in terms of mentorship resources, the GC communities. So the FYN is, as Natalie mentioned, only one of a number of communities across the government of Canada. Many of them are there to support your development as a policy practitioner, as a comms practitioner, as a manager, as an executive, and in all sorts of different workloads. So take advantage of those communities and those opportunities. And then we have a list of the GC Facebook pages. Please note, there is no official GC Facebook page. These are groups that are set up by people for a grassroots purpose. So there's a GC communications group where people post whether they're looking for a job or they're looking to hire someone in communications. There are still usually requirements attached to that. So whether it's that somebody is already in a pool or is looking for like an at-level secondment, something like that. Check those out. And then there's the GC Job Opportunities group on LinkedIn. which was only stood up, I think, 3 months ago and has something like 17,000 members in that group. So take a look at those places to find jobs as well, and to see what people are posting, what people are hiring for right now. All right, and with that, I think we are ready to move to the question and answer period. So we will turn over to our moderator, Jimmy.
Thanks so much, Josh and Natalie. As mentioned, this has been an excellent conversation, an excellent presentation. And there's a number of questions that are already in the Q&A function on here, and you can ask questions through there. You can vote with the thumbs up button, and maybe I'll start with Josh. Any guidance on how to approach requests for undergoing training that align with your interests, that don't fit into your current work, but could provide useful skills for future projects?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something that if you have a really solid manager, they will support those kind of requests. And it's not to say that if you have a manager who's not supportive of these requests, that they're a bad manager. But I think what you can do as an individual is look at, where is the value for you as a professional, but also for your organization. How do you kind of show that value and show what you're going to bring back to the environment from that learning opportunity? If you're attending, the career boot camp, and your manager is hesitant to approve time for that activity, how can you kind of bring back some value? I'm going to attend the following workshops. I'm going to take some notes. I'm going to share, my key thoughts with our team, and also share future learning opportunities that are offered through the FYN. That takes it kind of beyond, this is just an opportunity for you, but also an opportunity for you to kind of bring back that learning to your team. It may also be in terms of aligning, lots of, like, most departments will kind of have priorities of who they're trying to develop, what type of roles they're trying to develop for. So even if you're, starting off as, an AS2, PM2 in a department, you can start to look at things that will help your long-term development, but will also assist your department. So whether that's leadership development training, whether that's looking at, if you're not bilingual, to start classes in French and start that learning process as early as possible. And I think just be realistic with what you're trying to propose. If you started your job yesterday as a term AS1, then maybe approaching your manager and saying, hey, I'd like the department to support my executive Masters of Public Administration program at a cost of $20,000 a year. That might not be realistic. But if it's something about supporting time, there are a ton of different events that are really all you need is the support for your time, so that you can attend, whether it's in-person learning day of the Federal Youth Network or other training through other communities, or courses or events through the Canada School of Public Service. So see where you can kind of align what you're looking for with what your manager is looking for. See where you can kind of like get their concerns and then address those concerns, to try to sort of mitigate that and hopefully find kind of a compromise or like a win-win scenario, I guess.
Thank you so much for that. And considering your love of networking, Natalie, I just wanted to know if you're interested in a particular department, but don't see any postings on jobs.gc.ca. How do you know if they're hiring or who to connect with?
So I think in that regard, again, yes, networking is like an amazing way to kind of figure out what's going on out there or meet people in an organic way, from various departments you might be interested in. And this year I participated in the Lifting As You Learn mentorship program, that's being run by D&D. And I went to an in-person networking event. And I guess, in the back of my mind, I was kind of curious about a job in global affairs, but I didn't anticipate that at the networking event I'd actually bump into a woman, and I was chatting with her. Turns out she's a director at global affairs, and she starts telling me the kind of work that she's doing. So I thought that was really fascinating, that I kind of had been thinking about a certain department. I go to this networking mentorship event and I bump into someone from that department, and I get to kind of hear about the work that she does and exchange contact information. So I think definitely keeping a pulse on different events that are going on where you know that individuals within the government of Canada will be participating and going and just having the courage to say hello and meet people. You might bump into someone that's doing the kind of work that you would like to be doing one day. And you can start kind of creating a Rolodex of contacts that you might want to reach out to one day when you feel ready to take that plunge and move your career in that direction. So yeah, get out there, talk to people, meet people, ask them what they do, because you might find a connection that is, kind of where you'd like to take your career next.
Thank you. So Josh, how do you convince the person that you're right for the job when technical know-how and skills that are self-taught and learned through hands-on experience are undervalued by some hiring managers? Example, certification and diplomas in project management. My screen's going a little crazy here. Bear with me for a second. And that are must-have, or even through, though you have, sorry. So how do you convince people that you're the right person for a position?
Yeah, and I think this is a general frustration sometimes of trying to get in to the GC or even into any employer right now, where sometimes like a job posting will say, we're hiring for an entry level project officer. And for that entry level project officer job, we want somebody who has 3 years of experience and has a degree in project management or half a dozen courses or whatever the case may be. And sometimes that shows that the organization is not being realistic in terms of what they're hiring for. That they're hiring for an entry level role, but they're requiring mid level experience for that role. But I think there are a variety of ways to convince folks that you're right for the job, and I think part of that is being able to showcase your potential and not only what's on your resume in terms of the jobs that you've had and the experiences that you've had. So Jimmy, I'm assuming that you have your pilot's license actively. Is that right? So I would say, I don't have my pilot's license. I would not be an airline and hire me based on potential to be a pilot, because that doesn't seem like a safe role. But there are very few other roles where that's the case. There are lots of roles where, whether it's an entry level role for communications, or for project management, or HR, or finance, or policy, where it's very difficult for you to show that experience before you're in that role. But it's easier for you to show potential and the steps that you've taken to kind of develop that skill set before you're in that role. Before I was the national chair of the Federal Youth Network, I was the regional chair for the Future Leaders of Ontario. So that's the FYN's regional network. That wasn't anything I had any sort of skill or moderation or like certification in, but I did it at the corner of my desk, and I would develop workshops. And in that role, my staff at one point, my team, we faced workforce adjustment, and so I volunteered to. I raised my hand and said, like, I think I'm fine in my job search, but I think our 28 employees here who are going to have to look for a job for the first time in their federal public service careers are going to face some challenges. And I volunteered to develop workshops to teach them how to apply for jobs, understand GC jobs, go through the interview process, and set themselves up for success. So that gave me an opportunity to really develop that skill set as well of developing that learning content, delivering that learning content, and really showcasing that skill. But so I think you can do that in a number of ways. Volunteer opportunities are huge. Volunteering with the communities of the GC can develop all sorts of different skill sets. On my team, I don't know that I have a particular person on my team who I hired because they had the exact experience of the role that I wanted them to do in the future. Just online with us today, we have Haley, who is substantively an auditor with CRA, who was brought on to do project management. Yang, who is just graduating, who was brought on to support Haley in project management and our GC Students Network. Tammy, who has served a variety of roles and who I worked with previously, and where she was able to apply that to a new role and a completely different skill set because I thought that she would have the skills to be able to bring to the table. So I think there are a variety of ways to do it, but it can be a frustrating process to find these jobs that are not realistic in terms of the experience that they're looking for an entry level role.
Thanks for that. And actually, I want to kind of build on that for a second here. And Natalie, I think I had a fascinating experience yesterday, actually. I was lucky to visit the headquarters of the Canadian Space Agency outside of Montreal. And normally I'm not what I would consider to be somebody who has much to offer the Canadian Space Agency, or the work that Canada is doing in that regard. But as I was talking through some of the challenges that the Canadian Space Agency was facing, I'm realizing I did have skills and experience and knowledge that actually would help frame some of their questions that they're dealing with. How do you deal with remote operations in remote communities and remote places? How do you kind of leverage work in the Arctic? These are things that I have a bit of experience with. I was surprised that I came away thinking, okay, I have something to offer here. So Nat, I'm just wondering, how do you find confidence in order to understand the value that you bring to a new organization, or understand, to recognize the strengths that you do bring, and perhaps maybe even sell your experience to a group that they don't know they need you, but they do need you? Thank you.
That's a great question. I think very early on in my, like, back all the way towards university, when I was I had to write a thesis, and I wrote it with our dean at the time. Like, he was like my supervisor for political science, and his feedback was, in your career moving forward, always being ready to say yes to opportunities and experiences, because you underestimate yourself, and we don't even realize what we're capable of until we're put into a situation in a new experience, and we have to show up, and you realize, holy smokes, I can do this, and I can do it well. And I think you build up that confidence about yourself the more you take on opportunities and experiences where you don't really know what you're getting yourself into, but you want the new opportunity, you want the new experience, because you want change in your career. And you're an adventurous spirit, and you want to get out there, see new things, and you take on these new experiences, and you realize that you're capable for that role. So I think definitely, like, when I got the opportunity to go work at Parliamentary Affairs at ISED, that kind of came out of I was having a random coffee chat with a director, and she was talking about her work, and I was like, this sounds really interesting. And I was like, is there any opportunities to come serve? And she I went over there on assignment. I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no idea that I would be sitting in. We went through an election at that time, and the Liberal Party got reelected, and we had to sit in on meetings where we were reporting to parliamentary secretaries on behalf of the department. I wasn't reporting, I was taking notes, but I had to take notes on these meetings between our department and our parliamentary secretaries that were coming into office. I had no idea that the job experience was going to lead to that. That I'd be working on memorandums to cabinet and having to produce parliamentary strategies. I'd never done that before, but I delivered and I showed up. So if an opportunity looks interesting, don't hesitate to ask if you intuitively feel like that might be something you'd be interested in doing. And when you take on these opportunities, I think what we realize is that we have the capabilities for the roles that present themselves. If the door opens, that door opens because, I believe that when you walk through it, it's because that door is meant for you to walk through. So, and I think just in my career, I've also learned that when a project is presented to me, always showing up with a positive attitude, a can-do attitude. I'm always, how can I deliver, and how can I go above and beyond what's expected? And what I've always experienced at the end is that you do deliver. It's while you're moving through the process, you're like, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? And then realizing, yeah, I can do it. So.
Thanks so much for that. This next question is something that I struggle with a lot. I have three young kids under 10 years old, and have been trying to navigate finding time for my family. So a lot of the advice we've been hearing for advancing career, it feels like we're talking about somebody having a lot of spare time or a lot of free time, the networking, volunteering, seeking out mentors. What about those of us who have other significant family or other commitments? If you don't have time for a lot of extras, what are some options that you might be able to consider, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like a lot of this is about negotiating with your manager in a way. So having discussions with your manager about the amount of time that they are comfortable approving for professional development, for being involved on workplace committees, for being involved in interdepartmental committees. Certainly I will say I spent a chunk of my time earlier in my career doing a lot of things like after hours, like 3D printing signs and finding different ways to create video content or stuff like that. But I think you can build a lot of it into your workday. So actively think about each year, what you're trying to learn, what you're trying to develop. And I think thinking on sort of two fronts, that one is like being excellent at your job. So are you currently excellent at your job, or do you have some level of progress to go there? Is there some level of workload training or peer coaching or mentoring or something that could support you to be, the best person at your job, whatever the job that is. The second part is carving out some time of where are you going next? Is that moving towards a management role? Is that moving towards a sort of further specialization in a particular area? And then what learning will kind of support that? I think we, over time, as a government of Canada, have sort of deformalized some of the learning processes. I think there used to be like a career development leave, and it was like 37 and a half hours a year or something. And that was your time to say, like, this is not workload training. This is something I would like to attend myself. Now that's more subject to your manager's approval for that time. And make sure that you're making use of that. I think we hear from folks where they say, well, we're far too busy in our workload to be able to take any time off to do anything. And I think sometimes that is the case. Yes. Sometimes that's a matter of figuring that out with your manager, figuring out your workload, finding whether it's workload efficiencies, or figuring out that it's never going to be calm. So I need to build in this this time for my own development. It is very much aligned with the clerk's priorities for us all to spend time on developing our careers and trying to be, the most, not necessarily the highest level, but the most impactful public servants that we can be in our career. And that takes a combination, in my view, of workload training and professional development, so that you can, be the leaders of tomorrow. But have those conversations early with your manager in terms of like what amount of time is appropriate for that. You can build in, I'm going to, meet with my mentor virtually or in person. You can build that into your workday if you have your manager's approval to do so. When I was early in my career, I built that into my learning plan. I allocated, I had a mentor. Actually, my manager was amazingly supportive and taught me all sorts of things, but set me up with a mentor. And I met with that mentor, once every 4 weeks for an hour. That was on my learning plan. That was on my performance management plan. I participated in the Young Professionals Network at CRA. That was on my learning plan in terms of developmental activities with the number of hours allocated. So I think we have a lot of opportunities to kind of build that into our day, because it is not just about your output today. It's also about what you're going to do tomorrow, the next day, for the next 25, 30 years. And you don't want to stagnate, but you also don't want to be unaware of what is going on in the world outside of your box and your role, because that's how we, I think, get ourselves into trouble in terms of not understanding that my role might get reduced because of artificial intelligence in the next 10 years. My role might get changed because of various automation or government priorities that are changing. So being a sort of more savvy and aware public servant will really help you sort of navigate what is going to happen in the public service in the next decade.
Thank you. Natalie, let's say you found your dream job, but it's not within you don't know anyone in that field, you don't know anyone in that specific department. How do you, what are the do's and don'ts when approaching a prospective employer? How do you do the pitch? How don't you do the pitch? On average, how much time should you invest in these opportunities? Thank you.
So I think I just moderated a session, and at that we had some speakers, and they kept mentioning this, and I think this is great advice, which is um, don't go into it immediately asking for a job. Make those personal connections, really get to network in a way where you set up a coffee chat and use it as a means of kind of learning about different work opportunities out there. If you meet someone and they spark some interest, like following up with, would you have the time for a 30-minute coffee chat? Um, in many cases, I have found in the public service, people are really open and willing to make the time. And then, using it as an opportunity just to have an initial conversation before you immediately dive in to asking for a job opportunity. This will also give you an opportunity to kind of hear about the work that they do, see if it's a good fit, and then make your ask. I'm also really, really, really big on writing it out. So if you haven't found your thing, I like to write out like, this is what my dream career would feel like. I would be doing X, Y, and Z. I would be feeling X, Y, and Z. Writing that stuff out and getting clear, about the kind of, job experience you'd like to have. Is also really important. Sort of that self-reflection and setting a tone for yourself about this is kind of what I'd like to experience. And then going out into the world, and as you meet people, those connections will be even more emphasized because you're more clear about the kind of work experience you'd like to have. I also kind of feel like it also opens up those opportunities as well when you get clear, when you make that time for self-reflection, and sometimes even the career that you're currently in can turn into your dream job because you write down, you figure out what are my strengths, what can I contribute to my current team, and also how do I want to feel at work, and how do I want to show up at my job so that my job feels like my dream job as I'm waiting to potentially experience my next career opportunity. So I like to be, look at also how can I make my personal experience amazing. And so, even today, here I am spending time during my workday getting an opportunity to do some public speaking because I find that makes me feel more fulfilled as a public servant. So figure out what you're interested in, and think about how you can transform your current job into your dream job, as well as you keep exploring and identifying new opportunities.
Thank you for that. Josh, how do you find out what you are passionate about when dealing with burnout? Like I know this is something that affects a lot of people, especially those with a lot of other commitments outside outside of work. What strategies would you recommend there? Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess I will start off by saying to think about the last 5 years, not just in the public service, but in the world, it has been a challenging time. We started off 5 years ago, never having heard of COVID, and went into a world that went into lockdown, then opened up, then closed, then opened up, then closed, where we were working from home fully. Then, RTO mandates came in, RTO mandates changed, government priorities changed, global world events just in the last 2 weeks probably have lots of us on edge. So be aware of that when you are trying to figure out sort of career options. Something that you're passionate about may or may not be a good fit for you in terms of your future career. I will give an example. So I did a degree in international studies. I'm very passionate about conflict studies and migration and refugees and how Canada can best support areas in conflict and figure that out to save lives and have an impact. I went to work in what should have been my dream job. as a manager at Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. And what I found was that I was too connected to those issues. I had too much sort of not personal connection. I didn't, necessarily, I wasn't the child of refugees, all that sort of stuff. But I was too emotionally invested in that as a workload for me to be able to be a manager at Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. And I found, in the first couple of months, like dealing with very difficult files, it was emotionally taxing. And I realized quickly that it was not going to be a long-term career for me in that department. So I think as far as, figuring out burnout and career transitions and figuring out your passions, I think some of it is burnout can also happen from a misalignment where we're in roles that aren't a good fit for us, where we're on a team that's whether it's sort of not supportive or where you're finding you're fighting the institution that you're trying to serve in a way, like you're battling sort of personal values and different things within a department. So I think there's some level of, is the workplace you're in and the job that you're in healthy for you? It's not to say that it's, it's a toxic workplace or whatever. It's to say, is it healthy for you and what you value at work, and is it working for you? If not, I think then it's a matter of looking at some of those self-assessments. Taking it back a step to kind of figure out like what is your next step in the GC? What are the departments that could be a better fit? What are the priorities that you want to work on going forward? And how do you align your skills with those areas? And I would say, like, on multiple occasions throughout my career, I've reached out to the employee assistance program when I was going through a tough time. It is useful and helpful to seek that counseling, and beyond the employee assistance program, our health plans cover, I think, $5,000 of whether it's psychological services or psychotherapy. So don't hesitate to tap into those services. Those are there because they are needed. And those amounts of coverage have increased because it was a need. It is a need across Canada. We're seeing, mental health challenges are increasing with every demographic, every age group, because of what we have gone through as a country and as Canadians over the last 5 years. So don't hesitate to figure that out earlier on and reach out to AAP, reach out to find counseling services that can help you as well.
Thank you for that. So we have got about 7 minutes left. There's some amazing questions here, and I would like to get through a couple of more. But so I think, we've spoken a lot about passion. We've spoken a lot about finding what drives you personally. But how do you make that transition, I guess, from taking your passion into practical steps, I guess? The question that I see here is, it sometimes feels in the system, and it's actually, to be fair, it's been a little bit of a new experience for me coming into a very large system as the government of Canada. It sometimes feels like there isn't necessarily a lot of room for passion. This is a very structured environment. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. Any tips on Natalie, on how to get through this our system and keep your passion alive as you're trying to grow as an employee? Thank you.
Yeah, that's funny because, like, everyone's always like the golden handcuffs, right? And I say, like, I don't know. I feel like I've had a really amazing experience with the government of Canada. I don't know if I'm just lucky, but I think one way is, like, very early on, I got involved with the Federal Youth Network. My first project at ESDC's Innovation Lab was looking at creating a new youth service. And so we had to do consultations with various departments. We had to work with Global Affairs, PCO, and we met with various nonprofits. But I remember very early on suggesting, hey, taking a bit of initiative and suggesting to my manager, hey, why don't we invite some younger public servants and consult them? And she's like, well, if you can make it happen. So, I and they very early on kind of got the email sent out. And then we had this huge turnout of young public servants to a session. So I think that there is opportunity to take initiative, and I've been rewarded many times throughout my career for taking initiative and for making a suggestion to my management saying, hey, can I work on this idea? And they're like, okay, 10% of your time of your work week, you can allocate it to take initiative and kind of work on things that you think are interesting. Our department at ISED, we have, our professional network called Interconnects. When I got involved with that, I didn't realize how connected it was to DMO and various ADMOs, and how much our senior executives value staff that step up and take initiative. And during COVID, I was co-chairing the committee, and we went into like a virtual work experience, and it was like, how do we, transition? And I remember working with my team of like 8, individuals and colleagues from across ISED. And the approach that we took was I asked everyone to kind of come up with an initiative, what kind of impact they wanted to have in the department, any kind of positive impact. And each of them led an initiative. And I was blown away. I was so, impressed with the projects that people came up with. For example, we launched our own little kind of how to interview for a job promotion, and we had various executives that stepped up and said, yeah, I'll do some mock interviews to kind of give people feedback on how they could navigate their career within ISED. So we wanted to do a virtual coffee chat. Our DMO was willing to meet with us, so I think we are the workplace that, for me in the government of Canada, my experience is that we have a lot of opportunity to take initiative and spend a little bit of our work week or work year working towards something that you're interested in. Of course, thinking about how does this help my organization? How does this help like the mandate that we have, and take initiative. So if you have a little percolating idea in your mind, bring it up, talk to your manager about it one-on-one, and try to actually execute it. You might be pleasantly surprised.
Thank you. And I'm going to bring up a question, Josh, that's further down the chat, but I'm from the big city in Nunavut, which is about 2,000 kilometers from Ottawa. I grew up on the west coast of Hudson Bay. A lot of these strategies we've been talking about today, how do you make those connections and build those bridges to find opportunities in a large country like Canada? We have a lot of people who are very happy living in different regions of the country, and just any thoughts or strategies for overcoming that barrier of distance and opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the first is really spend some more active time on networking and building your network. I have a ton of colleagues who we work with frequently who live in Yellowknife, Iqaluit, Whitehorse, or remote areas in Saskatchewan or Newfoundland, and it's because we know about them. It's because we'll have a session in Career Bootcamp about regional career development, and part of regional career development is making yourself stand out a little bit. So not being the person who's kind of lost in the shuffle. I used to be the team leader of an area where we had all sorts of over talented employees doing roles where no one had kind of considered them for a higher level position despite their skills. People with masters in public administration working at a call center as like a PM1. And it's because they didn't necessarily stand out. No one had said, hey, why don't we take your skill set and apply it to something else? So I think LinkedIn is very important. We have some recordings from last week on how to build a good LinkedIn profile. And I think that's a great tool to really connect with folks. And no matter where you are in Canada, you can be sharing that. Follow Jimmy on LinkedIn. You can learn all about Nunavut and the North, and Jimmy shares a ton of stuff on there. And connect with people who are doing interesting work, and that might be your next connection to a new opportunity. I think we see, for folks who have sort of established themselves as stars in the GC, they don't have trouble finding their next job. They are, connected with a bunch of different people. They've worked in a lot of different areas, and they've established and built a reputation and brand that people want to buy into. So I think that's what you need to do if you're in sort of a more remote area, is kind of figuring out what that brand is going to be, what that reputation you're wanting to build is going to be, and what you're going to be specializing in, or whether your skills are as a generalist or whatever the case may be. But spending some active time to build those connections. And then I think by doing that, you'll get the managers who are like, hey, I don't care where you are in Canada. I want to hire you. I want to, negotiate the exemption to, in office, and, make that push, because I know that you will be excellent for this role. I've certainly had folks I've hired to my team where, I advocated for them to join the team. I reached out, and I knew about them because they stood out, because they had gotten involved in other regional networks, because we had, had them as speakers or panelists or volunteers or collaborators for various events. So really definitely spend some time on that. And there's all sorts of ways to do that from no matter where you are in Canada, to build your LinkedIn presence, to build your brand, your professional brand, and make yourself stand out.
I appreciate that. And if I could just put in a plug for when you do have the opportunity, like something I've been encountering as a deputy level official in the government of Canada is often people will tell me what they think I want to hear. And given the opportunity, I would really want to hear what you think, and it should be a safe space in order to do that. Any final comments, Natalie?
Well, I guess I always like to end it off and like sort of wishing everyone the best in their career journey, and hoping that everyone does find the thing in the government of Canada that makes them feel that passion to show up for work. I want to be a part of a public service where we feel motivated and inspired by the work that we do. I definitely don't want to feel like I'm wearing golden handcuffs. I'm here because I want to be here, and I hope everyone else is here for the same reason.
Thank you. Josh, any last comments here?
Yeah, just finally to say, so thank you for the discussion, and to reiterate Natalie's point, like, good luck in your career, and remember that this is a unique organization that you work for. You being one of 360,000 public servants, being able to live in different places and engage with different communities, and make a difference in the lives of Canadians, no matter what the fiscal environment is. There is no organization that I know of in Canada that delivers the incredible mandate that we deliver. And we'll go through ups and downs in terms of hiring and development, but always stay really attached and engaged with that overall objective, and our overall mission as a government of Canada.
Thank you. And I always take every opportunity I can to highlight the North, and I really just want to. There are options as well in the North, both within the government of Canada and within our territorial partners. There's nearly 2,000 vacancies in the 3 territorial governments. There are secondment opportunities, interchange opportunities. You can make a real difference in the North, and please, if you're inclined, think about that. So thank you all for joining us today. That concludes the sessions for day 3. Be sure to join us on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern for another exciting day of Career Bootcamp. Have a great day, everyone, and take care of each other. Thank you.